The spade struck metal with a dull, hollow clang. Andrew froze, sweat dripping into his eyes despite the chill evening air. He knelt lower, scraping dirt away until a corner of something hard emerged. The garden soil, heavy and damp, reluctantly surrendered what had been buried deep for decades. With each heave of the shovel, the outline grew clearer, an iron-bound chest, its wood swollen with age. He dragged the chest onto the grass, panting, fingers trembling on the clasp. For a moment, he hesitated. His mind conjured all the whispered family rumors – murder, stolen wealth, dark secrets his uncle never spoke of. What if this chest confirmed the worst suspicions about the old man? Before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Andrew had never wanted the estate. The letter from the solicitor felt more like a burden than a windfall. A sprawling, crumbling mansion miles from anywhere, ivy twisting across cracked stone, shutters sagging on rusted hinges. His uncle's property was an anchor to the past he hardly cared to revisit. He remembered Henry Somerton as a stern and solitary man. His father's younger brother, a mathematics professor at a modest college. Henry rarely attended family gatherings, and when he did, he lingered at the edge, polite but detached, eyes shadowed by private storms no one else could glimpse. The inheritance documents were straightforward house, grounds, garden, but walking through those decaying corridors unsettled Andrew. Wallpaper peeled in curling strips, chandeliers sagged, and the air was thick with mildew. He felt like an intruder, as if Henry's silence still pressed down on every room, suffocating and judging. The strangest legacy, though, was the house's whispers. Villagers in the nearby pub murmured about Henry, about his tragic wife. She had fallen down the stairs decades ago, breaking her neck. The coroner ruled it an accident, but locals muttered otherwise, that Henry had pushed her and that his coldness hid something darker. No proof ever surfaced, no charges were filed, yet the rumor clung like the ivy on the building, choking his memory. Henry had died alone, no children, no companions, and no friends close enough to eulogize him. Then there was the locked east wing. It had remained unopened for decades together, and no one exactly knew what it held. At least, that Andrew knew, he could have it opened soon. The deed to the estate gave him no comfort. He skimmed it idly at first, only to frown. The word garden repeated with unusual frequency, far beyond necessity. Why emphasize it so much? The phrasing felt deliberate, out of rhythm, almost like a riddle disguised as a legal conundrum. Andrew read the deed again that evening, light flickering over its faded ink. The repetition was too precise to be an error. House, garden, and garden grounds. Garden to be preserved in perpetuity. Each phrase landed like a dropped stone. The garden wasn't just mentioned, but practically shouted from every page. He muttered aloud, "Why the garden, Uncle? The house made sense, the land too, but why the obsessive emphasis on overgrown hedges and molding statues?" He shoved the document away, irritated. Yet when he closed his eyes that night, the word still pulsed behind his eyelids. Garden, garden, garden. The next day, he carried the deed into the village. Mrs. Linton, the elderly caretaker who had known Henry for decades, squinted at the paper. "Odd that," she said, pointing to the repetitions. "Your uncle loved puzzles. He solved every single crossword in every newspaper. I believe he even made up a few. Maybe he left you one final riddle?" Her words unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He asked about Henry's wife, but Mrs. Linton only pursed her lips. Terrible tragedy. People talk, but no one knows. Still, he wasn't a man you could easily understand. Always seemed elsewhere, even when he was standing in front of you. Andrew pressed for more, but she shook her head. "Let sleeping dogs lie, Mr. Somerton. The past doesn't like being dug up." Her tone was sharp enough to sting. He left the cottage with the deed tucked under his arm, unease gnawing deeper than before. At the archives, dust motes swirled as Andrew scrolled through microfilm. His uncle, Henry, appeared occasionally mentioned in mathematics appointments, letters, and lectures, but once, briefly, he was tied to classified assistance to the War Office. Andrew's heart raced. Back at the estate, Andrew traced the words of the deed, pondering the archivist's comments and Mrs. Linton's warnings. Henry's silence, his wife's suspicious death, his reclusiveness, it all felt deliberate. The references to gardens seemed like more than coincidence. Andrew started mapping phrases, counting every third and fifth word. At first, nothing. Then, the words began to align coordinates hidden within the text. The deed wasn't legal prose, it was a cipher. Suddenly, The phone rang. A sharp voice spoke something unintelligible before the line went dead. Andrew froze, uneasy. The next morning, he stood by the crooked oak, shovel in hand. Sweat beaded on his brow as the earth reluctantly parted, revealing only clods and stones. Frustration set in. Had he misunderstood the cipher? After hours of digging, Andrew climbed out of the pit, staring down at his work. Empty. Doubt crept in. Maybe Mrs. Linton was right. Perhaps he was chasing shadows. Exhausted, he drove back to the village. The archivist raised an eyebrow as Andrew unfolded the deed. He showed his markings, asking about any codes used in official documents. The archivist chuckled. Not in deeds, but codes were common during the war. Professors used hidden signals in maps, poetry. Your uncle could have done the same. Could he have been involved in intelligence? Andrew asked. The archivist shrugged. Possibly. But those files are sealed for decades. Some things stay classified. On his way back, Andrew overheard whispers outside the pub. "That place is cursed," one man said. "Didn't his uncle's wife fall down the stairs?" "Fall, my foot." He pushed her. Chilled, Andrew entered the pub, but the owner dismissed the gossip. "Superstition runs deep here. Don't take it seriously." Yet unease lingered. That night, surrounded by scattered notes, Andrew noticed something he had missed. A sequence of numbers, not aligned with words, but with lines from the deed itself. Skipping whole sentences, the pattern shifted again, leading him farther east toward a patch of earth that had sunken oddly. Between two gnarled apple trees, the ground seemed disturbed, as if something had been buried long ago. Andrew's breath caught. This time, as the spade sank into the earth, the rhythm was different, hollow and expectant. Still, doubt gnawed. Then the spade struck something hard. Andrew froze, heart hammering. Scraping dirt with trembling fingers, he uncovered a corner of corroded iron. He gasped aloud. Adrenaline surged as he widened the pit, revealing more of the object wood swollen with age. Iron bands pitted with rust. It was a chest. He crouched beside the chest, fingers grazing its corroded clasp. What if it wasn't treasure? What if bones filled the chest, wrapped in rotting cloth? Andrew dragged the chest into the study, setting it near the fireplace, where Henry's books lined the shelves. The crowbar slipped beneath the swollen lid. With a groan, the clasp finally gave. Then, trembling, he lifted the lid fully. Inside lay bundles of paper, yellowed with age, tied with faded ribbon. Beneath them, leather covers winked faintly through crumbling tissue. He pulled the top bundle 3 passports, not one, but several, with different names, different countries, and different photographs of the same man. Some bore Henry's unmistakable face, others subtle variations, a younger version slipping through identities. Andrew's stomach lurched. What had Henry been doing with so many lives? Stamps littered the pages of the passports. Paris, Vienna, Berlin, Warsaw, spanning the war and after. Andrew flipped through them, disbelief mounting. Each passport told a fragment of a life lived in shadows, moving across Europe when ordinary travel was impossible. His uncle hadn't been reclusive, he had been covert. Beneath the passports, Andrew found envelopes sealed with brittle wax. Inside one was an official letter from the War Office, stamped with the crest of Bletchley Park. His uncle had been a codebreaker. The cipher in the deed suddenly made sense. The letter described Henry's duties, vital to national security and requiring utmost discretion. Andrew sat back, trembling. The archivist's hints, the cipher's numbers, the secrecy, all connected now. Henry hadn't been hiding shame, he'd been bound to silence by duty. Further down in the chest, Andrew discovered a diary, his aunt's handwriting, delicate, unmistakable. He read passages of love, of meeting Henry during long nights at Bletchley, falling in love amid cryptic puzzles and whispered secrets. At the bottom of the chest, Andrew found currency from different decades, a small fortune, then a letter sealed with, "For Andrew." His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside, he found a small brass key, tarnished with age, and a tag reading, "East Wing." Relief flooded him. The mystery of the locked corridor would soon be solved. He unfolded the letter, Henry's handwriting steady but faint. "If you are reading this, Andrew, you have solved the garden puzzle. I always knew curiosity ran in our family. What you found here is my real life. The world knows me only as a professor, but before that, I served in silence at Bletchley Park. We cracked ciphers that helped turn the tide of war. Later, I carried those skills across Europe, traveling under false names, bearing passports you now hold. They are from a time you may not fully understand. Your aunt was my light. We met among codes and secrecy, yet built something beautiful. Her death was an accident, cruel and senseless. Rumors painted me darker, but truth never mattered to tongues eager for scandal. I buried my grief, and, with it, much of who I was. Andrew's eyes blurred. He continued reading. I could not destroy these documents, nor could I flaunt them. The world has little appetite for unsung heroes. So I left them here, hidden, until someone willing to bear the truth unearthed them. I don't want glory, but I hope you will understand me better, my heir. The money you find is modest savings, kept aside for you, not to burden you with wealth, but because I know the estate will weigh heavily. Sell it, rebuild it, burn it down, it matters little. What matters is you understand the silence that defined me. Do not chase my shadow into darker corners. Do not imagine treason or murder where there was only loyalty and loss. Remember me as a man who loved, who served, and who carried grief too quietly. That is the truth, Andrew. That is all I ask you to keep. The letter ended there. Andrew lowered the page, tears stinging his eyes. The chest no longer felt ominous but intimate, a vessel of love, not guilt. The passports were relics of duty, the diary a testament of devotion, the money a quiet act of care. He looked around the study, the dust thick on Henry's bookshelves. For the first time, the silence of the estate seemed less suffocating. It was the echo of a man who had borne too much alone, leaving behind a puzzle as explanation, not condemnation. Andrew gathered the documents carefully, wrapping them in cloth. He wouldn't parade them for acclaim, nor bury them again. He would preserve them, respecting Henry's chosen life. The garden had given up its secret, and with it, Andrew had reclaimed his family's true story. The lock to the east wing yielded reluctantly. Inside, dust veiled a room frozen in time. Dresses hung neatly, perfume bottles lined the dresser, and a photograph of his aunt smiled from the mantel. It was no crypt of guilt but a shrine of love, Henry's way of preserving her presence long after her death. That night, Andrew stood by the crooked oak, staring at the dark earth. The hole gaped silently, but the weight on his chest had lifted. Andrew whispered into the night, "I understand now, Uncle." The estate still loomed broken and alien, yet now it held meaning. What he had inherited was not ruin or rumor, but truth, and in that truth, peace.